Hey, what's up? This is Sully from Godsmack. Strap on those boots, baby, because you are now in the trenches of the war room with the one and only Mistress Carrie right here on the Mistress Carrie podcast.
What's up? This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Her hair so lovely, pretty eyes.
Hey, this is Brent from Shinedown, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie. Hey, Carrie, go put your bra on, girl.
Hey, this is Steven Tyler, and you be listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
What's up? This is Aaron from Stain, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Hi, everybody. This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, and you're listening to the one, the only Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is David from the band Disturbed, and you're listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
Hi, Bruce Dickinson here from Iron Maiden. Yes, indeed, Miss Whiplash herself, Mrs. Carrie, is here to unchain your brain.
Hi, this is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're listening to Mistress Carrie.
This is Dennis Leary. You are listening to my favorite, Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is Corey from Stone Sour, and you have the privilege of listening to Mistress Carrie. Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
Hey, it's Mistress Carrie, reporting for duty from MCHQ for episode 166 of the Mistress Carrie podcast. And before we get to this week's guest, Doc Coyle from Bad Wolves, I want to let you know that the Mistress Carrie podcast has launched new accounts on Instagram and Threads. You can find it at Mistress Carrie Podcast. And of course, you can always find all the links for me on Instagram, Facebook, Cameo, Twitter, and so many others linked at mistresscarrie.com. You'll also find every episode of the Mistress Carrie podcast, every episode of my video show, Cocktails in the War Room, my concert calendar, my blog, and you can shop in the official online Mistress Carrie shop. Grab all your official Mistress Carrie gear right on the website and make sure you're showing me your MC and tag me in the photos when you wear the stuff out and about so we can all see how badass you look. You can check the links in the show notes of this episode for more info. This week, guitarist Doc Coyle from the band Bad Wolves is my guest. He's also a member of God Forbid. Right now, he's filling in on guitar with Ice Nine Kills on tour with Metallica, and Doc is also the host of the X-Man podcast. Doc first appeared on the podcast on episode 9 with Chris Traynor from Bush and Mark Morton from Lamb of God on the Guitar Gods episode. Bad Wolves are getting ready to go out on the road with The Who. They'll be in Boston at the House of Blues on September 12th. Tickets are on sale now. The link to buy tickets is in the show notes. I caught Doc in a hotel room and we sat down and talked about heading to Vegas, the LA weather, growing up in New Jersey, surviving the COVID lockdown, his songwriting process, and dealing with personal loss during the pandemic. We also talked about the new era of women in rock, the staying power of classic rock, and the return of nu metal. We also talked about DL, the new singer in Bad Wolves, the new album, his guitar tone, the loss of Eddie Van Halen, how Dolly Parton actually plays guitar with her long fingernails, rock bands releasing extremely long songs, and of course, we had to ask him the Geezer Butler question about his pets, why donuts in LA are so delicious, and so much more. Doc is always hilarious, and I love having him on the show. So allow me to reintroduce you to Doc Coyle from Bad Wolves. Mr. Doc Coyle, what is going on? It's so good to see you.
I'm still waking up. I've had a week. All right. We just came back from Vegas. We were there for I flew to LA from Oklahoma City to go home to see my lady. I was home for a couple days, then drove to Vegas. That was crazy. And then Vegas was Vegas, that gets. And then we had problems with our buses. So then we had to fly from Vegas to Spokane yesterday. So we were flying all day yesterday. And I didn't really want to do anything today. But then at some point I was like, I have to get up. I have to do something.
You don't have to get up, but...
Yeah, I do. Jackie, if I miss this interview, Jackie'd she'd throw me in the river. It'd be a rough one.
Jackie's my girl. When I call her, she works with a lot of amazing bands, including Bad Wolves. And when I call her, she's like, I got you, girl. I'll make them do it. It's like, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, I said no one needs to make me do this. I'm here for you. It's a pleasure.
How long can you do Vegas? How many days before you got to get out with your life?
I don't really go very often unless we're playing there, So I don't think I've really even done like I'm going to Vegas. I'm gonna act wild for a week. I've never done that. So it's usually only a day or two.
I can do like 5 days max. I can't do a full week. I can't do it. I gotta get out.
Well, and then Bad Wolves, our guitar player Max lives out there, so we've been there a lot to do like writing sessions and recording, but then we're just working, so it's not exciting.
Well, I've asked the guys from like Five Finger and Corey Taylor, guys that live in Vegas, how the hell you can be productive in a place where literally everyone from around the world goes to just get in trouble and be mischievous and get wasted. And
they're all sober.
Yeah, but still, it's like
it's an easy answer.
But it's not even just the drunk part of it. It's that there's always distractions. There's always people in town. There's always shows. There's always stuff going on.
Yeah, but I mean, LA's like that, and a lot of people live there. There's always every day in LA. There's a different show. There's a different band in town. There's something going on. I mean, I think, yeah, but trust me, being sober. If all right, if you're a sober person, right? You don't want to hang out at a casino or some shady spot. Like you're not rubbing, you're not, you're avoiding all the BS and the potential places for trouble, I think, but it's, I think it's another hub, because, a lot of people are leaving LA because it's too expensive or whatever. And, and a lot of rockers are in Vegas, a lot of rockers are in Nashville is like another spot.
It comes up all the time on the show, how much rock music is coming out of Nashville.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's expanding, but we were there and, we got in and you turned on the news, and the only news is going on is how record breaking the heat is. That so we were there a year ago. Bad Wolves opening for Fall Universe and Papa Roach, and it's 10 degrees hotter this year than it was last year. So I guess like average on the time was 105 and it was 115. So it's like pretty. Part of me is like, all the stuff's moving to Vegas. I'm like, is this going to be like uninhabitable?
I tell people from that part of the world all the time, all the bands we know that are down in Florida, all the bands we knew in LA, Vegas area, Nashville, I will take the snow over the scorpions, the snakes, the alligators, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, the mudslides, the wildfires. I'll take the snow every single time. Every time, twice on Sunday.
But there's the middle ground, because that's why, like, if everyone could, they would live in LA, because it's basically you kind of avoid everything. But it's expensive and it's, packed. But I mean, like I said, LA, it's like usually it's like the oasis, right? So you'd be on tour and it'd be, 100 degrees wherever in Wisconsin or something, and then you go back to LA, it's 78. And then it's winter and you're in Wisconsin and it's,
minus 20.
degrees.
Yeah.
And then you go back to LA and it's 78. You understand what I'm saying? Like, so it's actually it's a reprieve. Like, it's not quite as hot as when it gets really hot, but it's also not as cold. So, that's, San Diego also, is, I think almost even nicer than LA.
Yeah. Every time I go to LA, I'm only good in LA for about 5 days too. And then I kind of gotta get out of there too. I don't know how people get anything done. Everything's so like, yeah, I'll meet you later. Like, coming from the Northeast, the personality change is so hard for me. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah. I mean, well, look, I already know with you, it's in your soul. You're just like, you're built for the Northeast. You're like there's some people, they get to LA and they start looking around. They're like, look at these soft ass people. I can't. Where's Duncan? And then
look, the hardcore people know where Duncan is because we got the app. We can find one anywhere.
Yeah, but it's not on every corner though. That's the point. So it's just a vibe thing. Me, despite being from New Jersey, growing up in the Northeast, I feel like I have a much more laid back kind of West Coast vibe, so I blend in very well.
That's what I was going to say.
Very,
I'm impressed because you're a Northeast guy that you've been able to assimilate. I'm impressed because I don't think I could do it.
Yeah, but even when I was I'd work in Brooklyn. I used to work at Duff's in Brooklyn. Shout out, heavy metal bar, and I would meet people from the West Coast. They're like, dude, you seem more like you're from the West Coast. People would say that to me, because like I'm from Jersey, but I don't have like. There's this thing where motherfuckers just mad to be alive, just mad. Like you see people on the subway, just mad that they woke up that day. They're like, man, I wish the Lord would have taken me overnight. Right? I go to this job, deal with these dumbass kids, just mad to be alive. So I don't have that. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, you've always been like a chill, kind of even keeled, which is weird considering where you come from, because when you're a Northeast person, and when I say Northeast, I mean like Boston, New York, Philly, Baltimore, but I annex Chicago. They kind of, because they're similar, like they get in by default.
Well, but it's different. There's a culture, there's a Midwestern cultural thing that is also a little different because so the Chicago winter, that it changes you.
It's a thing.
It's a trauma that they exist in. All right. And and so it breeds a certain, they have a certain acceptance and resilience and a different kind. It's a different thing. It's like Northeast is a little more fuck you. It's like I gotta go. Things are happening. Midwest, Chicago is a little more like stoic. I'll put it that way.
We're in this together. Whereas in Boston and New York, it's like we're fucking miserable. But if you come into my town and you talk about how miserable you are, we're like, fuck you, get out of here.
Yeah.
Like,
I get it.
We've just fused we bathe in it. We're basking in the misery and bonded. It's a trauma response. Embracing the suck is what the military calls it. So I had to look it up. The first time you came on the show, we did a Guitar God episode. And you and you and Chris Trainer from Bush and Mark Morton from and Mark Morton from Lamb of God, in the days of the lockdown, came on the show, and all three of you guys, I wanted to have three different guitar players from three different bands kind of talk about the similarities and differences of songwriting and riffs and all of that stuff. But I had to go back and look, and it was August 5th of 2020 was the last time you were on the show. The world was very different in August of 2020 compared to now. We didn't know if we were ever going to go outside again.
Yeah, I mean, that was right at the beginning. Not beginning, but it was, kind of actually that was probably the toughest time, because you had the BLM stuff going on. You had, it was like, because all these, it was, that was a rough one. That was a tough time, because we were really, truly isolated.
Oh, yeah. And it was that time, especially in the music industry, where nobody knew if it was going to come back and when it could come back. Like, we were all talking about it like, when, if we're able to tour, like when, like we just had no idea. And smack dab in the middle of it, just a few weeks after I talked to you guys, I decided to get married in the middle of it. I've gotten married.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've gotten married since the last time I saw you. So the world is definitely different for me.
The pandemic is our nom, where, like some people never left the jungle. Some people never got at, the brain got boiled and they're still stuck. Me, I'm trying to put the pandemic as far in the past as possible, and kind of like, it's like it happened, but it's like I have a little bit of amnesia.
Well, I talked to
purposeful amnesia.
I talked to a lot of musicians about Because, like, how are you going to get locked down, right? Lose the ability to tour and your livelihood and not have it affect you. And there seems to be one of two schools about it as a musician, that you're either going to hunker down and write music as an escape from the world craziness, or you're going to hunker down and write music as a reflection of the world craziness. So as you guys were obviously welcoming DL into the band and working on new music, was that a conscious decision that you guys made about one way or the other? About whether or not you wanted to write about the craziness of the world, or whether or not you wanted to give your fans an escape from the craziness of the world? Was it even something you guys talked about?
I don't think it was, to be honest, I don't think it was much of a factor, because it was just kind of like, so essentially Battles had just put a record out near the end of 2020 or 2019. So we were like right in the beginning of kind of the first, third of like this album, launching this album and touring on it. And it was basically like, all right, it's over. You're kind of promoting this record. So we immediately had to go and, like the idea was, all right, well, we're going to start working on the next record. And then my mother died, like right, a month after the pandemic kind of started. And that really like screwed me up personally, where I just like, I'm not the type of guy where like, if I'm depressed or if I'm hurt, I don't really want to write music. Creativity really comes from like positive inertia for me. And, so it really so the other guys just started working on stuff, and I was like almost very disconnected from what was going on. And then maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 months after my mother had passed away, I slowly started like, all right, let me start trying to work on some stuff. Let me start, let me kind of get into it. And then, as things were kind of going along, basically we're talking beginning of 2021, that's when we split with Tommy. And we ended up essentially like, at that point we thought we had a record, but then we split with Tommy. So then like, we kind of had like 60% of a record. So we actually had to go back into full writing mode right after that happened and kind of like reformulate. And so it was just kind of go from there till pretty much the middle of that year. But I don't think we ever thought about it in terms of like the pandemic affecting us. It was just, everything surrounding that situation was so like, it was just so crazy and so contentious and so toxic and ugly. I think that, and to a degree, I guess you could say, if the pandemic didn't happen, maybe that never happens, or not in that way. And so it's a reflection of that, and maybe that bled its way into the creativity. But I do think having that long a period of time away from doing what we all do, bands put out some of their best records ever, because I think they weren't in a rush to finish making an album. And it's like, I just think it's frustrating. I think there's like, you need like somewhere to get out, whatever. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean it's inspired by like the actual pandemic or being home. It's just like whatever's going on with you gets like amplified, and you got this time to really focus and harness everything. And I just think it's just it was a very frustrating period for a lot of us. And that, not knowing, and also just the amount, it's a lot of death and destruction, more than 1 million Americans died. It's really scary, So I think that's events like that are always a lot of great art is always going to be kind of created by that.
Well, I have to ask you about the creative process, because I talk about it all the time on the show. I can't write songs. I'm fascinated by people that can come up with an idea and turn nothing into something. But you talking about how when you get into that kind of sad, negative headspace that you don't feel creative, yet there's someone like Dave Grohl who can go through immeasurable loss and find a way to create arguably one of the Foo Fighters' best albums recently. And to me, it's just fascinating that some people almost have to be in, I'm not saying Grohl, but there are artists that when they're happy, they don't know how to write. And you're saying that if I'm not happy, I can't write. It's just fascinating to me, the way that it affects certain people and not others.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say like, you know, I definitely have had moments where, you know, it's been like, you know, actually I'd say this. I think when if I'm sad or depressed or I'm going something, I actually think lyrics come easier. But actual like music, the actual music part of it is much easier for me if I'm in good spirits. You know, so I could actually think about times when I was going through it and dealing with something, and I utilized that as a way to find, you know, have something to say in that regard. But yeah, everyone's different. And you probably hear about more the opposite, right? You hear about how people go, well, I was depressed or this bad thing happened and music was my outlet. It was my way to, you know, that's probably more common. So maybe I'm different than most, but I definitely look at all creativity for me. It's like being in a good space. And sometimes you can create in spite of that. But you know, for me, it's always been a lot more like just feeling good and feeling like, all right, I got something. And it's like that, just the act of feeling creative is like almost something that puts me in a good mood, you know?
I've always said that rock and roll wouldn't exist if women weren't bitches, because we seem to inspire great rock and roll music by breaking dudes' hearts, and then you guys write songs about us. Except Taylor Swift, obviously. She has turned that script around.
I'm just saying, I think there's just as many female artists that have written songs about getting their heart broken. I don't think there's any, I don't know if that's gendered. I think, you know, rock music in particular is probably more, skews more male in terms of the creators, but there's, you know, at least with like solo artists and singer-songwriters, probably just as many women had their heart broken, you know. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
But
well, that comes up all the time on the show, that being in rock music for as long as I have, I kind of was sitting around waiting for like women to really take over rock and roll. And it feels like in the last couple of years, women have just hit this new stride in this era. There is so much great rock music being made, like hard rock music, metal music by women right now. It's like women in rock have been waiting. Jackie will tell you, we've been sitting around waiting for a day like today. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've seen it, you know, like I remember when, especially like a little more on the kind of metal side, when like you would, like Angela from Arch Enemy, you know, it's like extreme metal vocals in a metal band that was like very unique. Like you just didn't see it. And now I feel like every new week there's another band, and then obviously it gets a lot more attention when it's the lead singer and the vocalist, because they're obviously usually at the forefront, or they're the kind of the visual representative or the spokesperson of the band. But just even as instrumentalists, you know, it's not a novelty. It is just, there are just great female musicians out there. And I don't know if it's a situation where just more women are taking the initiative because they're more interested in it, or if there's just more opportunities and it's more accepting. I don't really know, you know, chicken and the egg. I don't really know. But I think ultimately, like, a big part of it is like the fan base, right? So if there's a female artist comes out and the fans embrace it and they support it, I think you've seen that with, you know, artists like In This Moment and Hailstorm, where a big part of their fan base is women, you know, because because ultimately, especially when you have a lyricist who's speaking very personally, people are going to connect with that on a very like empathic level. And if you're kind of speaking your story and, you know, and a woman's story is just going to be different than the man's, right? And those experiences and those feelings and those emotions. And so, and I think that's great because this genre skews so male. The more young women, girls that can discover it, it just makes everything bigger and grows the pie. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing. I think we're in a better place if our shows look more like society, which is basically 50-50, than just, kind of a male dominated culture, which I think metal will always kind of be that to some degree because of just what it is in its bones. But for that to expand and us to not kind of think about it not be closed-minded about, oh, it was like this, so it should be like that forever. It's like, no, it should evolve and we want this to be as inclusive as possible. And, whether that's from a male to female thing, on a racial level, sexual orientation, everything, gender, everything. I think we want everyone to feel comfortable and not gatekeep that on a identity level at all.
Well, I think representation is a big part of it. Like you said, I talked to Nancy Wilson during the lockdown, and her and I talked about this. And she was like, when Ann and I were kids, we wanted to be the Beatles. All the other girls wanted to date the Beatles. We wanted to be the Beatles. And now you've got little girls growing up wanting to be Lizzie Hale, because there is that generation of women rock stars that they're seeing on stage do it. And so it's like, oh, well, it's possible. Like when the Wilson sisters were growing up, there weren't a lot of women succeeding in like rock. There were female artists, obviously, but like the way that there just seems to be so many more women that have shown that it can be done.
Yeah, but it also expands out of that in that some of the biggest pop artists, particularly female, whether it's Demi Lovato or Billie Eilish or Miley Cyrus, have been very vocal about their connection to rock music, and maybe their live show is going more rock, or they'll put out an album that is more influential rock, or they'll do collaborations with other rock artists, and so it's even broader than that when because these are some of the most. I mean, even Rihanna, her guitar player is Nuno Bengour.
I literally was just going to bring that up because I talked to him.
Yeah,
and it's like. Like before the Super Bowl, and I'm watching the game, like, I can't believe that's Nuno from Extreme shredding with Rihanna at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but that's my point. Like this, I just saw this report on Ryan Downey's newsletter, and now rock is actually second out of all consumption, not just streaming, but all album sales and everything, behind hip hop, and it's close. Right, so it's actually hip hop, rock, pop, and listen, it's a lot of catalog. It's like new rock is not as popular as like classic rock. Like for some reason, there's something about classic rock music that has this kind of like undying quality. Like it keeps like new kids just discover AC/DC and Pink Floyd and Zeppelin and the beat, and it's like it just never goes away. Right,
that's how good it is.
Yeah, there's something just special about it, right? But there's always this narrative that rock is dead, guitar is dead, right? This thing kind of keeps going around, but it's cycles, right? There's up and down, and but seeing how that has kind of transferred to these super big pop stars, like I think that line is much thinner between a Billie Eilish and a Demi Lovato to like in this moment. Or a spirit box than we really think.
Yeah,
it's I think Gen Z is not as infatuated with like being in like a category. I think it's a lot more fluid in terms of like, oh, I like this hip hop artist, I like this pop artist, I'm going to this hardcore show, and I'm going to this EDM thing. Like they're not as like defined. It's like I just like this one thing. I think they're a lot more diverse.
Back when I was in high school, the bands you listened to defined your personality. It was a badge of honor that you wore, that you made a statement like, I like that band. It says something about me.
Yeah.
And now you go, digging through the recent history of somebody's Spotify account, and it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and I think that's, in a weird way, who's to say what what are the benefits and the negatives of that? I think overall it's a good thing. It's like, I know, like back in the day, like the UK, it would be like the punk kids would like get into fights with like these kids. It was like, it was really tribal. And obviously each subgenre is going to have its like diehards and the people that, that are like that, where that's their favorite band and they dress like it and their whole thing, is a reflection of that. But yeah, I think as much connectivity we can have between genres and cultures, it's always a better thing.
I talked to Elias from Nonpoint recently, who I've known for a long time, and we were talking about this unlikely resurgence with these younger kids you're talking about with new metal. I mean, Ronnie Radke and the Falling in Reverse guys just played a show in the biggest Jenko jeans I've seen in a decade, and it's all back. And they're discovering bands like the Deftones, and it's unbelievable that new metal is kind of finding this whole new fan base now.
There's a New York Times. I was literally just reading a New York Times article, like right before that, kind of talking about that same idea. And I think the new metal thing. I mean, one thing you got to keep in mind. I mean, when it came out, how big of a cultural movement. I mean, these bands were number one on TRL. They were selling. It's like the Limp Bizkit album. It was the biggest selling rock album of all time at the time. This was not a little genre. It was, at the time, it was the biggest thing. These bands were mentioned in the same breath with Eminem and Britney Spears and Backstreet Boys. So when something is that big, it just doesn't disappear. It just hibernates. So the fact that it's having a resurgence, and like I said, it wasn't just music. To me, it's very similar to the hair metal thing, where it wasn't just a music. It was a fashion. It was a lifestyle. There was a whole, and when you can combine, when you have a whole culture around that, people will connect to it on a broader level, right? And then there's also like the lyrical content. Like that was the first kind of one of the first genres to really talk about deep depression and kind of like connect on that level. Is very reflective of what young people were going through at that time and dealing with, and that kind of resonates now, right? With where we have all these, depression is up and teen suicide and all the kind of loneliness from social media and all, it's all this
and COVID
stuff. Yeah, of course, yeah, all that. And so it's cool, and it's and also just on a purely musical level, its impact musically has been influencing the last couple generations of bands forever. So it's sonically, it never really went away. It was always kind of there, and it was always kind of embedded in what was going on musically. So it's not, I'm not surprised by it at all.
I mean, Korn spent $1 million making a music video. Like, a rock band would never spend $1 million making a music video today. But if you were going to get Carson Daly to bring you on TRL,
which video cost $1 million?
I thought "Got the Life" cost $1 million, didn't it?
Oh, I mean, it might have. I don't know.
I thought it did. Yeah, I thought I read that somewhere.
You're probably right. That was also like, I think 2001 was the most records ever sold.
Yeah.
So it was the peak of, resources, right? Like, so if when these bands were selling so many records and these labels were like printing money, you could kind of get away with stuff like that.
Yeah. You were talking about DL coming into the band. I had him on the show shortly after he joined the band, and he was so quick to talk about how welcoming not only you guys were, but a large portion of the Bad Wolves fan base, really making him feel like he was welcome there. Now that you've had a chance to get on the road and play shows, how how has that been to kind of really be able to put Bad Wolves back in fifth gear and open up the engine, see how fast it can go?
Well, I mean, I think to me, it's the most important thing is doing the shows and connecting face to face, because so much stuff exists in comment sections and, it's like, it's very hard. Sometimes you can, listen, our actual experience kind of since then has been very difficult because it's like, where we become this kind of lightning rod band that there's just a collection of people that is like made it their mission in life to voice how much they hate the change or think we're terrible. And that's for a lot of reasons, because they've been like gassed up and lied to. And it's really unfortunate, but you have to kind of delineate between the virtual world. Like, is it just 20 people online versus the real world, which is like, oh no, like we're out here, we're playing these shows and people are having a great time. They're singing along and you're kind of connecting on that level. So it was just really important for us to get out there and kind of get, by the way, we didn't know, right? We didn't know if it was going to be, people were going to be booing us and throwing eggs at us or something. But it was a great experience. I mean, we basically did two legs with Papa Roach and Hollywood and Dead, and then Falling Verse came up with that second leg. And then went to Europe with Volbeat for like 2.5 months. And that was incredible. It was just, I felt like that whole process was like just reestablishing ourselves. And also for DL, just getting the reps, because he was never a front man. He'd never done it, anything in that capacity. So and you can't expect someone who's never done that job to just come in and like, just have it all worked out. You got to play the shows. You got to get the reps in. And I think he's really coming to his own. I think he just feels comfortable. He's rocking out. He's bringing the intensity. And then this new record, just, what he's doing vocally, he's just really taking it to the next level. And also as a songwriter, because he's a brilliant songwriter, riff writer, producer. He wrote, I think 3 or 4 songs for this record, maybe even a little more. And so it's like this album is a much bigger part of his personality musically. So I think he's, and that obviously is going to make him feel more comfortable, right? And feel like it's his band. He's not just kind of wearing somebody else's suit, so to speak. So yeah, it's been if I said it was an easy time kind of transitioning all this, I'd be lying. I think it's been a challenge for all of us. It's taken its toll on us. But the way you kind of exercise that is through music and creating and doing that stuff, because that's what people are going to connect with. And, we just dropped this new song, Bad Friend, last week. And it's been like, I think people really kind of see that we ain't fucking around this time. This is not that we were fucking around before, but it's I think it is a notch or two above, I think, the last record. And there's a bit more purpose. There's a bit more teeth. There's a bit more kind of fuck you in this record. And I think that's what we were feeling. And I think that's what was represented. And you just hope people hear the message, but it's still a lot, we have a very weird trajectory, this band, it's like how with the zombie thing and that thing and the Tommy thing, it's just, it's been wild. So the fact we're even here is a little bit of a miracle, to be honest.
So how does it work when you've got a front man that hasn't always been a front man and he's the new member of an established band, and you've got everybody that was kind of going through their own shit and getting ideas? Did you guys all get in a room to write these songs, or did everybody bring a lyric, a riff? Like how did it actually happen that you put this album together?
There was kind of different phases. Like I was like, because we had basically did the first tour, because the record came out October 2021, but we couldn't tour because we were still involved in a legal fight. So we legally couldn't tour under the band name. So everything got pushed off. So by the time we went on the road, which was, I want to say, February 2022, the record had been out 5 or 6 months. And, we were literally writing all the way up until, a couple months before it came out, because we were like scrambling and it was just, and then as soon as we were done with that first tour, it was like, we're going back in the studio. It was like, what? I feel like we just barely did this one. But it was like, to get the record out by this time, kind of, we need to do this. And so it kind of made sense. So we had a couple months off between those tours. So it started out as just me, John, and Max, doing these sessions, kind of creating instrumentals and just kind of getting a feel for it. That was kind of the first, like, the beginnings of it. I think we did like 2 sessions. We did like 8 songs. And then some of the songs that he brought were songs he already had, like different demos and stuff. And we kind of like bad wolves them up a little bit. And, those kind of developed. And then, John will sometimes, he'll work with, like, he has buddies of his, like just friends that are songwriters, producers, and we'll just do a session and kind of something will come out of that. And you'll check that out and go, okay, what's that? And then same thing, like, he'll work on something, he'll bring it, and then it gets kind of through our filter, of, what we kind of do. Or even like that friend, that was a song John did a session with Diego, the guitar player from Animals as Leaders, and it's all John's riffs, but John likes working with different people just to get different things. And it's like, so he had this demo, and it kind of like, and then what we did on this record, which we haven't done before, is, we have this guy, Joseph McQueen, and Josh Gilbert, who formerly of Agilely Dying Current and Spirit Box. They're a production team, and they kind of worked on every Bad Wolves record to some degree. But this one, that we worked the most with them, where we really brought stuff in and assembled it there in the studio with them, and they were a lot more involved. So we then, when we had all this stuff from here and here, then we like just blocked out like a month and just kind of like, all right, we're gonna get everything all together and finish everything. And then, so it pretty much everything came together. And I guess, what was this? Like, it was the beginning of this year. Yeah. So like January, we did all that. And then we pretty much had a record at that point. But it was, it's a very weird, kind of way this band works. Cause you never know where an idea is going to come from, a song is going to come from. But having Max back, and he's such a big creative force, having DL, like, these guys could write a whole Battles album on their own if they wanted to. So it's a lot, I'd say in many ways, like this record, I probably was a little more in the back seat, because it was just, you can only be so many cooks in the kitchen. Right. And you got to, like, everyone can't, be driving the car. You have to kind of like find out where everyone fits in, because there's a lot of creative energy,
It comes up a lot with artists that talk about the trust factor that has to be there, because to get to the good idea that ends up on the record, you've got to be able to work through the 99 bad ideas. And that's a very vulnerable place to be, in a room full of people that aren't going to judge you on the 99 bad, knowing you're going to have to go through that process to get to the good one.
Yeah, I mean, well, sometimes I don't think it's even like good or bad. It's just different, and kind of like getting to a place where everyone's feels pretty good about it, because I think that's kind of the tough thing in a band environment, when you're dealing with 3, 4, 5 different people who might have an opinion on something. Because it's one thing if you're like some, kind of a solo, like a Trent Reznor, who's like, who'll just go in the studio and just make something by himself, right? Or Devin Townsend, where they're not filtering it through, they don't need anyone else's approval, right? But a band is essentially some form of compromise, where someone likes this thing and maybe this person doesn't like it. And you got to have that conversation in the room, which could turn into an argument, and that's like, and I think that, sometimes the kind of dictatorship thing. If you have some genius, that's better for some bands, right? It's like, because it's unfiltered. It's like it's a strong perspective, and that really works. And then sometimes that tension between different artists makes something cooler because it's a little bit mishmash, right? You get a little bit of this person's influence, a little bit of this, and that weird middle place is what makes it interesting. That tension. So, and I don't think there's really a right way. It just depends on what project it is and what works best for that situation, you know. But you obviously, every unit has to figure out what their process is, and it's going to change, you know, especially if you have different members coming in and different voices coming in. It's going to change. You have to evolve with that.
A lot has happened since you were on the show the first time. The world changed a lot. Rock changed a lot, because since I talked to you the first time on the podcast, we lost Eddie Van Halen, which in guitar circles, there isn't a more seismic event than that. And we were talking about Nuno earlier. Shortly after Eddie Van Halen died, Nuno went into this whole conversation about tone. And now I ask every guitar player that comes on the show. Nuno gave me the example that he met Eddie in the early days of Extreme, and that he got to play Eddie's guitar, strings, cable, pedals, amps, and was so pissed that he still sounded like Nuno. Good problem to have. But it started me on this whole conversation with guitar players on the show about a guitar player's tone and where it comes from if it's not the gear. Because Nuno didn't sound like Eddie playing Eddie's stuff. So what's your answer to that question?
I mean, it's not even my answer. It's something people said before me, but I agree with it. It's the tone is in the hands. You know, it's that, you know, like obviously all the inputs matter, you know. It wasn't like Eddie came in and played someone else's rig. He modded his amp and he built his guitars, and he was very innovative with technology and trying to kind of get the instrument to fulfill his vision. So all that stuff matters, obviously, but yeah, you're going to sound like how you sound. Like I heard someone tell me the same story about plugging in the Zach Wiles rig, how they plugged in. They're like, damn, this sounds like shit. And then Zach picks up and it's Zach, you know? So yeah. And that's in much, I think, like Nuno, that can be a source of frustration, because if you're at this level and you want to get here and you're like, you know, how do I get, you know, what is the methodology? How do I get to sound better? How do I get, you know, and it's like, you know, because you'll hear another guitar player like, fuck, so good. How can I, you know, it like, you have this weird moment between like jealousy and like inspiration, right? Like where you're like, half you wants to quit because you're not as good as you want to be, and the other half you gets inspired to, why I need to work harder so that I can be better and play better and sound better, you know. But it's always something I think you're you know, I want to say struggling with, but striving for, at least for me, you know, because you can't when it comes to metal in particular, the genre keeps moving. It keeps going. Like these new people come along and they keep sounding better and getting better, and the tones get cooler and the riffs get cool. So it's like, if you're just stuck kind of with what was going on 20 years ago, you're kind of missing out. And so it's a moving target. And that's kind of, it's like a scary thing where you're like, you don't want to become obsolete. You know, that's kind of a good thing about me being able to do different bands and play with different bands, younger bands, is like having to kind of constantly update the reference points for what's happening and what's going on. And like, okay, if you were doing this thing 10 years ago, if you're not up to speed with what's happening now, you might get left behind. And I think that's probably in all fields, right? Like, because the way technology moves, like everyone has to constantly be educating themselves about what's happening, or else we're all staving off that obsolescence right behind our butts, you know?
The common thread I hear from guitar players is that when you first pick it up, you try to play it, you can't, you get frustrated, and then you keep playing it. And then there's a moment where something clicks in your head, and it's usually mastering a riff that you love, and you've tried so hard, and you finally play it, and you play it right, and it strikes something in your soul, and it encourages you to keep going. If that's true for you, what was the riff that you finally played right the first time, and you went, oh my God, I think I figured it out?
See, I don't actually think it's the riff thing. I think what sets guitar apart is that it hurts. So when you first start playing guitar, it hurts. You're pressing your fingers against metal strings. So to me, the biggest transition is to when it stops hurting, because it's not, when your fingers, you develop your calluses, and it's like you can play and you don't you're not, it's comfortable. That's the hardest part, is to have it be in your hands and feel comfortable, to actually feel like it's not foreign. So I can't really point to a riff, but I definitely feel like those first 2 years, what was frustrating about it was just why does this just, you want to play for 5 hours, but your hands are bleeding, it's like, just getting comfortable around it, I think is, just getting over that hump of where it doesn't feel foreign.
You're the first person to bring up the calluses. Nobody's brought that up before. To me.
Yeah. I mean, that was but that was the thing for me, where I felt like the first couple of years were so tough for me. Who knows, maybe I was pressing too hard, or maybe, who knows, maybe I was doing something wrong. But, it was something, I'm saying, if you're playing piano, you don't have that problem, right? It doesn't hurt to play piano, I don't think, as far as I know. Maybe drums it does, because you have that tension of kind of the response of that, where
and
it's
the calluses
it's
from the sticks too.
Sure. Sure. But drums, I feel like drums are so elemental, right? You give a drum to a baby and they kind of know how to hit the bongos, right? It's such a humanistic thing. But I don't know if guitar is humanistic on that level. It's you're kind of encountering a piece of technology to some degree, and so it's so that was kind of the main thing. But it's I think it can be endlessly frustrating, because, like I said, you're coming up, and then you hear, when you first hear Eddie Van Halen and you're playing guitar, and you go, that's you can do that with this. What? It's like, it's like magic, when you kind of see, and when you first start, hearing Steve Vai and Yngwie Malmsteen, obviously, I'm coming up, in the early 90s, and kind of hearing all that stuff, and you go, oh my God, I didn't even know I was just hearing Metallica, and now that exists, it's a whole different ballgame, but for me, it was obviously very, very inspiring,
Satriani came into the studio years ago and gave me a guitar lesson. And he was like, well, you're really not, my nails were a lot longer back then. And he's like, you're not going to be able to play because your nails are in the way. And I was like, Joe, you think my fingernails are what's going to keep me from being able to play guitar the way that you do? You think it's just the nails? It's not just the nails. I'll cut them right now and still won't be able to play.
Well, no, but you can't, you physically can't, you just can't
do it. Hey, Dolly does it. Dolly does it.
Who?
Dolly. If Dolly can play guitar with those nails, anybody can play guitar with those nails.
Who's Dolly?
Dolly Parton.
She plays who's with long nails. Oh, well, I gotta see that. I don't know how she's making a G chord or a C major with long nails. I have to see that. Maybe you could just do power chords, but I don't know how you can, because you can't fret down. There are certain things you just can't do. So
Dolly can do everything.
Well, there you go. She got the gift.
All right, I got to ask you these questions because they've become staples on the show since I saw you last. When it comes to songwriting, rather than have a favorite song, favorite album conversation, the craft of songwriting, of which I'm envious, like we talked about, Is there a song that you listen to from any genre, any artist, and you're like, man, I wish I wrote that song? It's perfectly crafted as a song from a songwriter's perspective. Something you wish you wrote yourself, but that if you were to look up songwriting in the dictionary would be perfect song quality. Is there one for you? And if there is, you got to break down why you think it's so brilliant.
I'm trying to think of just one. Because there's so many, there's so many genres. I mean, I think there's probably at different times. That's a tough one. Because when I think about like songwriting in its purest form, like to me, like the Beatles are the ultimate band. Because of just the vast amount of classic songs and just kind of
in
understanding.
such a short era of time too, which is kind of mind blowing that all that music got made in like 7.5 years.
Yeah, well, they were making sometimes 2 records a year, and then they quit touring, and so that's all they were doing. But it's still like songwriting to me is still like the hardest skill. It's the most impressive skill, right? So you can take someone like Kurt Cobain, for example, who I don't think people really consider him a particularly great guitar player. I think he's a pretty great singer, but he's not often, I don't think people put him in like the level of like a Chris Cornell or, someone like that. But using very simple, tools, would just had this gift, for songwriting, and that puts him just at the top of the whole thing. That it's the one thing that like sets people apart. And I was just watching this documentary about the Wham documentary.
I haven't watched it yet, but it's in my queue. Is it good?
Yeah, it's great. Like I'm not that I really knew much about the band, but we all know the big hits and stuff, and which just talks about George Michael as like this just preternatural songwriter, like he just had the gift, and so in a weird way, like I never like look at a song and go, oh man, I wish I wrote that, because I don't think that's possible. I just think you can only be the best you. You can't go, I don't sit there, oh, I wish I would have wrote. I can look at a song and go, that's brilliant. And I go, I'm more like in awe. Like, how did they do that? Like how did he, this record, King Dracula, you heard this guy?
Yeah.
I think it's like this record is out of control. It's like just insane. It's like every genre of music, and I'm sitting there and go, how the fuck did they come up with this? How do you decide? Because it'll like switch genres, right? It'll like go from this to that, and I go, well, how do you decide when a part is over and it's time to switch? I get so, I'm just blown away by all that, like how people make those decisions that seem correct. And then you hear something else that's not as good, and they make a decision that obviously seems wrong, and you go, well, why does that seem right and that seem wrong? I don't know. I'm more like bewildered by the whole thing, about how it even happens, So yeah. So I don't know. Like I feel like I could name a song that I really like. I go, oh, I wish I'd wrote that Kill Switch song, but I would more like study it and go like, oh, well, they did this here. Okay, that's interesting, and then you kind of get an idea around it. But I guess I don't think about things in those terms.
Well, there's a lot of genre bending going on right now. I mean, you look at the success of a artist like Sleep Token or something where it's like pulling this from over here and that from over there and kind of sticking it all in a blender, and somehow it makes sense.
Yeah.
Hey, if Bohemian Rhapsody can work, anything can work.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's very much more like my frame of reference, because I think, one of my kind of points of frustration, especially, like in the Bad Wolves world, where we got very kind of put in that radio kind of boxed early on, and kind of, you're in the studio and you hear people saying, "Oh, well, you can't do that," and the song's got to be this long, and it's just not how I'm wired, because I think all the best rock bands, the biggest ones, are the most adventurous, right? It's Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden and Metallica and Led Zeppelin and Guns N' Roses. Like all these bands have songs that are 10 minutes long that go on journeys. Like I don't get why people decided at some point that, like, I don't know, it's like they're making, well, I think it's one, I think some people just, our brains change, like they're just people start to lose patience, to some degree, where it's like they just I need something new. I can't, that's just that ADD thing. But me, I'm like, I like music that's adventurous, so I'm always gonna, Bohemian Rhapsody. It's like, I'll give you an example. Like sometimes, they'll do this because of like the algorithms or like Google. They're like the song title has to be like in the chorus, right? And they're like, well, it has to be because that's what it is. I'm like, oh yeah, you remember that part in the song where they're like, Bohemian Rhapsody? Nah.
Did you see that they just were auctioning off the stuff in Freddie Mercury's apartment in London, and the original lyrics that it was supposed to be originally titled Mongolian Rhapsody?
No,
that's what was written at the top of the napkin when he started writing the lyrics, that it was Mongolian Rhapsody. And I was like, that just seems so crazy.
Quite roll off the tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's constantly a mystery to me about what works, and things come in out of style, things come out. I think right now we're in a phase where I think you don't have to be quite as formulaic. I think hopefully bands are not going to feel as restrained by, oh, this has to be on the radio, or it has to be this formula, or else people won't accept it. I think that puts us all in a better place. I think people yearn for things that are artistically salient. Right, like, so when something comes out and it feels authentic and real, and you're like, it's almost like people are starving and they're being given a meal for the first time. When a lot of things are the same and something is new, it's like it's what people want more than anything. Which is why I think we're in a really nice kind of boom period where bands are taking off in a way that we haven't had like a run like this in quite some time. So it's a good time, I think, for everybody.
Well, you're on tour with a metal band that plays Mongolian folk instruments. If that's not an example of a time when music has opened wide open, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's going to be they're awesome, obviously. But I'm not even sure, because I haven't been to one of those shows. I'm not sure like who comes to the shows, what kind of vibe it's going to be. I know they tour with bands, and I've seen we're on the same record label. But yeah, it's just, like I said, it's just growing that pie, bringing more people into the fold. And again, probably a big reason why the Who is having the success they are is because it's fresh, not just repeating something someone else has heard, and that's, at the end of the day, like, we need more original concepts, and I think when you have something that's original and the songwriting is good and there's some charisma and maybe some imagery that people connect to, and you have maybe a good label or marketing there, that people are connecting with it. So it's a beautiful thing.
And guest vocalists like DL from Bad Wolves, that doesn't hurt either.
Yeah, no, that song's doing really well.
Yeah. All right, one more question before you go. Brings me to the Geezer Butler question. That's what we call it now. So I'm talking to Geezer Butler, and he lets it slip that he's got 13 cats and 5 dogs, which knocked me out of my chair. And then I asked him how the hell he keeps track of them and how he comes up with names. And Geezer Butler tells me that he names all of his pets after gangster rappers, and it forever changed my world. And now I have to ask every artist that comes on the show about their pets, and I blame it on Geezer.
So what's the question?
So do you have pets, and what do you call them?
So me and my fiance, we have a dog that we got together named Ruby, Ruby NoHo, because she was found in North Hollywood in a garbage dump or something. And then I wanted to call her Chloe, and then Jazz came up with Ruby, and it definitely worked out better. But her cat's name is Freddie Wu-Tang. So, kind of, I don't know if Wu-Tang counts as gangster rap particularly, but they're definitely street legends.
Yeah.
So it's just the two pets. I'm sure if we had more space, she'd probably want to get more pets, but I keep it minimal.
Well, when you get to the level where Geezer has got like a small animal farm at home,
yeah,
you're going to have to come up with a method of naming them that you can keep it all straight because.
Yeah, well, it's important to have a catchy name. Like me, I get mad when people have names that are too boring, and then I get mad when people have names that are just too crazy. All right, like let's just keep it. I want to have some creativity to it, okay, but not so much that it's like Clendomycin or something. Don't make that your name. All right, don't name your kid, Bartholomew. Let's not do that.
Unless your name is Wolfgang and your last name is Van Halen, then it works.
I mean, I'm not trying to diss the Bartholomews out there, but we can do better.
I named my dog Wednesday because I'm a lover of the OG Addams Family. Then the new series comes out and everybody's like, oh, did you name it after the new series? I'm like, no. Old school Wednesday, not new school Wednesday. Come on, man.
Well, I like it. All right. And I think people that would think that of you, I think they don't know you. All right. So you got to set them straight.
Well, now I'm glad I know your dog's names. Rockstar dogs'
just one
names.
dog.
That's what I mean. The pets' names, I mean. Now that I know your pets' names, I feel like I can end the interview because I never thought in a million years this was going to be a question I was going to have to ask everybody. But Josh Todd literally melted snuggling up to his dog Lion. Like, especially dudes just turn into puddles when they start talking about their dogs. It's really funny.
Yeah, my dog pretty much, well, it's like I didn't know this because I haven't had dogs since I was a kid, but we got our dog, and then the dog like chooses which parent is their favorite, and so I was chosen. So it's a special bond. My lady's very jealous, but because now I'm touring all the time, I think now they have their special connection, and it'll take a minute, for remember me, the guy, I'm back.
There's all those couples making TikTok videos to see which one the dog will go to. It's in the middle of the two.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you get divorced. That's how that happens. That's how you break up. When you put the dog on the spot and it doesn't choose you.
No, you can't take it personally. All right, you can't. I mean, it's gonna happen, but you just gotta go. The dog loves both of us. All right, that's a fact.
Well, September 12th, you are going to be in Boston, so I'm going to see you at the House of Blues. Cannot wait. So it'll be good to actually see you in person for a change because it's been a while.
Yeah. And we haven't played that venue. Damn, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if Battle was even played there.
Last time I saw you was in person. You guys were playing with Papa Roach, but you played the Palladium outdoors. This was pre-pandemic.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if Battles ever played that House of Blues. I don't think we did.
It's right behind the Green Monster at Fenway Park.
No, I know God Forbid played there with Lamb of God back in the day. So, or is it Five Finger? Anyway, I know I've been there at least once or twice, but it's been a while.
That's why I always ask you guys where the hell you are. Half the time you don't even know. The tours just blend in.
Well, I'm in the middle of about an 8-month stretch where I'm home for maybe 3 weeks. So, I'm slowly losing my mind, but we're gonna hold it down.
Yeah.
At the end of it, let's see what's left. I'll just be just a skeleton with some skin draped over it.
Well, remember how much it sucked when you couldn't leave the house? Now you just can't go home.
No, listen, it's all about balance, okay? We don't want to be stuck at home, and we don't want to be stuck on tour. We want nice, healthy balance, all right?
Moderation.
But, obviously, yeah, but, I got this, opportunity with Ice Nine Kills, and doing the Metallica thing. It's like, you kind of can't say no to that. So, I willingly took on this burden so I have no one to blame but myself. So I just have to try and do my best to make it through it in one piece.
Ice Nine Kills makes you a masshole. Those guys are a local band here.
I know about it. I mean, listen, I don't think you can just assume massholdom, but it's nice to be generally associated with it,
Do you know where the nearest Dunkin' Donuts is right now, Coyle? Because if you do, you're a freaking masshole.
Well, it's funny. We were in the hotel in Vegas. There was one in the hotel, and I actually went once. But we're in a different hotel. We're in like a casino. That was a casino hotel. This is another casino hotel in Spokane, and I don't know. I haven't looked. I was running out of time, so I just grabbed whatever coffee was in the hotel room. So.
All right, you're not at masshole level yet. Keep trying.
No,
you'll get there.
Well, but I have something that's going to disappoint you even further. Is when I moved to LA and I discovered the donut situation in LA, I'm like, Dunkin' Donuts I'm sorry, you just don't hold a candle. Sorry.
To the gourmet donuts, the foo-foo donuts you can get?
Not even gourmet donuts. It can be any donut shop in LA. As long as an Asian family owns it, it'll kick you. It's incredible. Doesn't even have to be fancy. They just do it better. It's a different game, Now the coffee, Dunkin' Donuts coffee is that's like its own thing. Like nothing really. If you're in the mood for that and you want that, that's what they do. In terms of their donuts do not compare to the West Coast.
I'm impressed that people in LA eat donuts.
Well, there's a lot of normal people in LA. There's 12 million people in a certain area. They're not all actors,
Yeah, I know, but I know there's a lot of avocado toast getting served up there.
Okay, but that's everywhere. It's every city. They got avocados, It just happens to grow real good in Southern California, It's just on the trees. Just get one. Boom.
We didn't eat a lot of them till Tom Brady started making ice cream with them, and then we were like, all right, maybe the goat says they're good. Maybe we'll give it a shot.
All right.
Then he left us.
He is old, all right? So at least he left you when he was, from a football standpoint, not for the earth.
I was going to say, he still looks pretty good being old. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, he keeps getting better looking. It's like, it's not really fair, but,
yeah,
I'm jealous of that as well. So
well, there's those memes that go around that they're like, it's not genes, it's just you're poor. That's why you're ugly. You're just poor.
Yeah.
Because rich people all look good somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. That's what I'm saying. That's the plan. Get some more money, get some surgery, get this cleaned up. It's going to be great.
I can't wait to see you in September. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Tell the guys I said hi.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on the show. And it's always a pleasure to speak with you anytime.
There he is, Doc Coyle from Bad Wolves, who is getting ready to go out on the road with The Who. You can see him September 12th at the House of Blues in Boston. Check the links in the show notes of this episode to get tickets. The band's new song, Bad Friend, is available everywhere. And in the show notes, there's a link to this episode's corresponding playlist, where you'll find the new song and a ton of Bad Wolves music and a lot of the artists and songs that we referenced in the episode. You'll also find all of Doc Coyle's links, all the links to find Bad Wolves, and of course, all the Mistress Carrie links too. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the Mistress Carrie podcast. New full-length episodes come out every Wednesday, plus every weekday, you get all your rock news and music headlines boiled down into around 5 minutes on the sit rep. You can join me every Tuesday night live on my official Facebook page from my video show, Cocktails in the War Room. And as always, you can find me on the radio on The Mistress Carrie Show. Get the details on all that and more at mistresscarrie.com. The Mistress Carrie Podcast, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network.